If you've got a business plan, everybody wants to look at it. And many people will say they're interested, but they are not truly interested until they give you that check. If you don't know what you want, then the odds of you ever actually getting it are pretty slim.
Welcome to Decision Points. I'm Scott Wood, and I'm here today with Mark Winters, author of Rocket Fuel and expert EOS Implementer. And most importantly, True North's implementer for the last decade.
How about that?
Yeah, how about that? Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you're here. The last time Mark and I saw each other was a week and a half ago in the lobby of the Noun Hotel in Norman, Oklahoma, watching the Sooners play. And then we were just commiserating off camera here about the Texas OU weekend and the tragic loss.
Yeah, the week before was a much better game weekend.
Yeah. Well, there's still time.
There is still time.
There's still time. All right. Well, Mark, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Want to talk about EOS today a little bit, but before we jump into EOS, let's just sort of start at the beginning. Where are you from? And
wow, the beginning. So Poteau, Oklahoma.
Okay.
Which is a small town almost in Arkansas, so far on the eastern side of Oklahoma. Born and raised there.
How many people in Poteau?
About 5,000.
Okay.
When I was growing up. It's a few more than that now, but it's been about that size. But it is the county seat.
Okay.
So it's the largest town in LaFleur County.
Okay.
So for what that's worth, about 129 people in my graduating class at Poteau High School.
Okay. Brothers and sisters?
Older brother, older sister, actually quite a bit older. So they're both more than 10 years older than I am.
So you're the baby.
I'm the baby, and it's almost like having two sets of parents.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. So in some ways, it almost feels like an only child because they're kind of off to school as I was, getting old enough to kind of know what was going on.
And what was your family involved in Poteau?
So Dad's a doctor, so he's kind of the town doctor.
Was the doctor probably?
There were a few.
Yeah.
There were a few, but he was super involved. Deacon in the church, involved with the boards of the local banks, actually helped get one of the banks started, super involved in lots of civic stuff. And, as you might imagine, in a town that size, everybody knows everybody.
Right.
So as a kid, that's kind of an interesting deal because everybody knows you, which is good.
Right.
But everybody knows you.
Which is not be so good sometimes.
Thing, right? So there's not much that goes on or happens without word, coming back around to where you were or who you're with or what was going on.
Right.
So, but a good place to grow up.
What's an early memory from Poteau that just sort of sticks with you? A lasting memory.
A lasting memory from Poteau. Well, that's a really good question I haven't thought about. So I would say Poteau is known for having the world's highest hill.
Okay.
Kavanaugh.
Okay.
It's 1 foot short of being technically a mountain.
Okay. What is the technical definition?
2,000 feet.
Okay.
And so it was just a foot short of that. People would try to stack rocks up there.
So
to kind
1,999 feet.
Right there. And so that was kind of a fun thing to do, was go up on top of Kavanaugh. Mm-hmm. And, we went up there a lot of different ways. We drove up there. We hiked up there. We, took all the different paths. But, that was just sort of a cool thing that we had. You could go up there and you could see forever. You could look out over the valley and kind of the other mountains areas. Eastern Oklahoma is a pretty part of the country that people probably don't realize. When they think of Oklahoma, I don't think most people think of that, but it really looks kind of like the Ozarks in northwestern Arkansas.
Okay.
So it's sort of a little hidden secret.
Yeah.
In fact, we'd go up there, and my boys have 3 boys on trips with their friends, and as we're driving in and you start to see the terrain sort of rise up, and it's a surprising thing. They're like, wow, I had no idea this was even there.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good memory.
Yeah.
All right, so it makes sense how you ended up at OU.
Okay.
So why OU versus OSU or some other school?
So my 3 kids.
And just for our listeners, like Mark is a big OU alum, and like he schedules our implementation meetings around potential college football playoffs and national championships, just in case.
We block those dates off. So if I ever, True North ever wants one of those dates, Scott and I have the conversation that says, if things break right. But so my kids are actually 4th generation Sooners.
Okay.
And so
you were never going to OSU.
Well, it was I could have gone anywhere I wanted. That was kind of the deal with Dad. And I made the same deal with my kids. But the reality was I went to my first OU game in 1976. So, the mid-'70s, OU's pretty good at football.
Mm-hmm.
And, the first game I remember going to see, we played Pitt, and there was a guy that played running back for Pitt named Tony Dorsett.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't even Dorsett yet. He was still Tony Dorsett.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a pretty good day and kind of shut him down. But anyway, I was going to OU games from the time I was pretty young.
Yeah.
And my kids were going from the age of about 3.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a part of our family sort of ritual and routine and tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Fall is all about that. So we really do. We go to every home game.
Yeah.
And we're almost all there every time.
Oh, that's great.
We try to pick one game a year that we travel to just to kind of go experience something new and different. And but yeah, that's about 4 months, 3 or 4 months where that's high.
That's front and center.
Yeah.
Where's your travel game this year?
Going to Alabama.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to LSU last year. This year we'll go to Alabama.
Okay. Good. Awesome.
Should be an easy one, right?
Should be. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know either.
We'll see. All right. So you go to OU, major in business.
So interestingly, as I was growing up, one of my favorite shows on TV was The $6 Million Man.
Okay. Yeah.
And my dad was a doctor.
Yeah.
So I always kind of looked at medicine.
Lee Majors.
Lee Majors was the star of that show, right? So Dad was a physician. I saw this $6 Million Man thing in bionics. And so when I went to school, my initial plan was I was going to build the $6 Million Man.
Mm-hmm.
So I initially was studying biomechanical engineering, which wasn't even a thing.
Yeah.
So I was engineering pre-med. And in the first semester, really, I figured out that this engineering stuff is hard.
Mm-hmm.
And they're real particular. I mean, literally, you had to have a certain kind of paper, a certain kind of pencil, a certain kind of eraser. And I'm like, really? And so I didn't.
It feels very in the box.
Didn't love that.
Yeah.
Pretty confining for me.
Yeah.
And so I sort of opted out of that. And as any good doctor's kid will do, I looked at medicine as something to fall back on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, well, I'll just be a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And
because that's easy.
Because that's easy. It's got to be, right?
Yeah.
And so what I learned there is, well, to be a doctor, you have to take chemistry, and you still got to take a lot of these pretty interesting classes, which, I'd always done pretty good in math and science, but at college, there was a lot of other stuff going on that wasn't happening in Poteau, Oklahoma.
Right.
So
it's a big new world out there.
As I got into that, it sort of became clear to me that if you really wanted to be a doctor and do it right, you needed to really want to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want to be a doctor. My dad did. He had great motivation. He saw that as the best way he could imagine to help people. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have that kind of connection to it. Mm-hmm. So I decided to go explore the business college and got a degree in finance, which I've never used.
Yeah, me either. No, just kidding. All right, well, that's good. All right, so you go graduate from OU.
Right.
Then what? Where do we go from there?
So I was hired by Procter and Gamble.
Okay.
To go into their
recruited on campus,
right? Just through on-campus interviewing. It's sort of an interesting deal. So, college for me. So I did well in high school. Small school. My brother sort of set a high bar for me academically that I had to try to match, but didn't do as well in college academically because I was just I was focused on other things. But when it came time for on-campus recruiting, one of the things I had done was I was very involved in my fraternity, and I was actually president of the fraternity. And I tell you what, man, I couldn't have had a better job on my resume than that. So when Procter and Gamble came recruiting, they absolutely loved that, and I had good experience. Just not that I was effective or anything, but just being exposed to what it really means to be a leader or a manager of people.
Right.
And so they locked onto that. They loved it. So I had an offer early in the fall semester. So then I've got to finish my college career knowing I've already got my job in the bank and try not to mess it up. But yeah, so I went to work in the sales organization of Procter and Gamble in Kansas City was where I started.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And then how long were you there?
So there for 5 or 6 years, and kind of an interesting deal there when I was hired. Procter & Gamble was really known more for brand management probably than sales. And I went in, and the manager that I had initially did a pretty good job of, selling me on why sales was the right track to have at Procter & Gamble. And he showed me all these other CEOs that had come from a sales path, because I was pretty ambitious at that stage in my life. But then the more I looked at Procter and Gamble specifically as a company, what I started to realize was, man, none of the people running this business came from sales.
Right.
They all came from brand management, and they all had like a sort of an elite business school degree under their belt. So I start talking to some other people. I'm like, is this really the track I need to be on if I want to run this place?
Yeah.
And it sort of became apparent that it wasn't. So I start kind of exploring options for how to get into the other side of the business. And what I found there, which was sort of interesting, was it was really hard for an insider, even though I had all this experience with the business, with the products, with the marketplace. I was sort of already cast in a certain light because I was coming up through the sales organization. So I went to graduate school while I was working for P&G at the University of Chicago.
Okay.
So good school.
Yeah.
That fit the mold of everything I was trying to do. In fact, the CEO of P&G would come recruit and give talks on campus at Chicago. So I would go up there for these events, and I would get in these conversations without them having any idea at all that I actually worked for their company. and so they would, when they looked at me as as somebody that they were recruiting off campus, again, the conversation was very, very different.
Interesting.
But anyway, I stayed in this sales organization. I kind of became...
Was the Chicago program part-time? So
It was, yes.
Going up on the weekends or...
Yep. So I was living in Kansas City, got accepted in that program, and I would fly up.
Yeah.
So I'd get up, 4 in the morning on a Saturday, and I would, fly up to Chicago. They had a shuttle that'd pick us up and take us down to the campus. And we'd spend all day there, and then I'd fly back late at night and get home about 1 or 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
For 40 weeks.
Wow.
Is that right? Longer than that. That's not right. 2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. 80 weeks maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was the MBA deal. Partway through, I'd sort of become a special projects guy in Procter and Gamble. So we were very acquisitive at that point in time. So we bought a company called Sundoor Branch, which had Sunny Delight. We bought Hawaiian Punch. We bought Fisher Nuts. And we were integrating them into the larger company, and I got put on projects like that. I built up a new distribution channel as we started to get into these sort of snack brands, which was something new. We were trying to figure out a way to sell more of them than what you could just sell traditionally in a grocery store, which is where most of P&G's products had always been sold. And so I was involved to set up this alternative distribution channel through convenience stores. And you think about that, we could afford to roll up a salesperson to a big grocery store that did a lot of volume.
Right.
But you can't afford to roll up a salesperson to a little convenience store with scatter all over the place. We had to figure out a different way to do that. And actually, a guy I worked with, he had the idea of, who goes to these little convenience stores? Beer distributors do. Okay, maybe we can partner with them. And so I got real involved in that, building partnerships with Coors distributors because they had a climate-controlled delivery channel, their trucks, because they kept their beer cold. And so partnered with them and began to build a whole business there that actually the company ended up taking and doing big things with. And then I got sent off to Milwaukee, Wisconsin to go try to fix a different problem.
So how long at P&G in total?
6 years, I think.
Okay. And so in the last 2 years you were doing the MBA?
Yeah.
Or did you come back and finish?
That's about right. No. I was actually probably the last year and a half. I didn't actually finish my MBA at P&G. So I had, people call it the entrepreneurial seizure moment, right? And so I was actually sitting in a class at Chicago, and I'm watching. It was team projects time, right? So you've got one project's got this widget that they've come up with, and there's this many people out there that would buy it. They can sell it for this. It's going to cost this much to make it. So here's how much money we're going to make. Then the next team has some service concept that meets some unmet need in the marketplace. And so I'm sitting there watching all these different business ideas. Man, that's so much more interesting than what I do, which is just sell more juice and snacks and whatever I was selling at the time. And so I realized that's what I wanted. Now, I didn't have the push yet.
Yeah.
That came shortly after.
Yeah.
And the push, interestingly enough, was a meeting with a manager, the person I reported to, and we had some senior executives coming into the market. This was a real common thing, right? They were all in Cincinnati, but they'd make these tours of the marketplace. And typically what we would do was we'd set them up, meaning we would make everything look perfect.
Right.
And this particular time, we were facing some very real competitive threats in the marketplace. And I felt like we needed to let them see that.
Mm-hmm.
If we were going to get the support that we needed to be able to deal with the competitive threats that were going on, they needed to see the warts.
Yeah.
And so I made that suggestion to my boss, and Scott, I'll never forget it. We're at a little, casual restaurant, just me and him, at dinner, end of the day. And he leans forward on the table, he looks at me, and he goes, "Mark, don't F with me." Except he didn't say S.
Yeah.
And I remember just sitting back in my chair and going, oh my gosh, this guy has my whole future in his hands.
Mm-hmm.
And I had it mapped out. I was going to be the CEO of Procter and Gamble by the age of 43.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I knew exactly who was going to be in, I had this whole plan that I was working. And so this guy who didn't see things the way I did,
mm-hmm.
he could change all that. And I realized that is definitely not what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And so I left that meeting. I went to a bookstore, and I was looking basically for any book that had the word entrepreneur on it.
Mm-hmm. Did you know the word entrepreneur at that point?
I knew the word,
right?
But this was before. So think about it. There was no entrepreneurship class in business school.
That's right.
It just wasn't there.
Right. It wasn't talked about the way it is now.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And there actually was one. So I did have at the University of Chicago a guy named Jim Schrager. That was the first entrepreneurship class I'd ever heard of, which I took, which was fantastic. It was great. But it was actually all about this same time. So I wasn't primed for it necessarily.
Right. Just kind of, it was dripping on you little by little.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that's when I made the decision. Look, I've got to do something different.
How old are you at this point?
25, 27, maybe.
Okay, so you go to the bookstore, and could you find a book that had?
Yeah, I mean, it was like Entrepreneur Magazine was a thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There was, how to start a business, maybe, something like that. It was really, I mean, there were maybe 3 or 4 books that weren't just more general management and leadership type things. But it was, I just grabbed something. It was less that I was going to read it, and more that it was just kind of, I don't know, it was almost just like a symbolic thing where this thing had sort of clicked in my mind.
Yeah.
And so then it was like, all right, how am I going to pull this off? And so I started thinking about what I would do, how I would do it, what was going to be required to be successful. And then, the chain of events, the way it kind of unfolded was,
you're in Milwaukee now.
In Milwaukee, right? And so corporate restructures are kind of happening everywhere. So this is early to mid 90s.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, mid 90s, probably 94, something like that. And so, P&G had already been through a number of restructures, and there was another one getting ready to come. And so I'm thinking, all right, this is my window. They're gonna come along. They're gonna offer packages to people. I'm gonna see if I can get one of those, and that'll give me a little cushion to kind of do this thing that I want to do and get out of here.
Yeah.
So they have the big meeting where they bring everybody in, and this guy that I had dinner with is going to be there, and he's going to tell each one of us one at a time what the deal is.
Yeah.
And so it's my turn to go into the room, and I go into the room, and he sits there with me, and he offers me basically a promotion. Which was totally unexpected.
Yeah, you're like, that's not what I had in mind.
Yeah, but it was the sweetheart account. It was, it was kind of the exactly what you would want given the scenario. And I'll never forget, I just said, yeah, I think it's time for me to leave. And I mean, that was it. So it was out of my mouth. It was out on the table, and here we go. And then
because you were already emotionally, mentally prepared to leave.
The ship had sailed in my mind.
You'd already left.
Yeah. I really had. And so I remember I walked out of he kind of sat back. He was shocked and surprised and all that. He didn't know how to deal with it. And then I walk out, and my peers that were out there, my colleagues, I kind of told them, and they were, nobody knew how to take it, and I was still processing it too. And so then, I get to That meeting was in Chicago. Remember, we live in Milwaukee.
Right.
Then I get to have the phone call with my wife, which is,
You did what?
you did what? and did you get the package?
Yeah. Because that was the plan.
That was the plan.
Right.
And the answer was there was no discussion of any package. That was
Right.
That wasn't what was on the table for me.
Right.
And so then the reality kind of started spinning in. All right, dude, you got to figure this out. And so I reach out to a professor in business school.
Where's your wife from?
She's from Chicago.
Okay.
She's from Chicago.
Did y'all meet at OU?
We met in Kansas City.
In Kansas City.
Right. So she was working there and I was working there. So we met there.
At P&G?
No. She was working for at first a bank and then then an actually.
All right. Well, so Milwaukee, Chicago, they're different, but it's not like
they're pretty different.
Norman and Milwaukee.
Hour and a half away from. She had actually gone to school there, so she went to school at Marquette.
Okay.
So she knew Milwaukee.
Okay.
But it wasn't like we had a bunch of friends or family there. So
that softened the blow a little.
Yeah. No, not really. And did I tell you she was pregnant?
No, you didn't tell me that.
Yeah. So there's that. and so we really hadn't talked about this at all. So she's shocked and confused and terrified.
And did you have a business idea at this point? No.
Kidding me?
No. You were going to take the package.
I knew that I wanted to do something, and I figured the best path to be successful was burn the ships.
Yeah.
That was kind of it.
Yeah.
Right? And so I did real good at burning the ship. And so now it's like, all right, I got to figure this out. I got to figure out a way to make some money. So I talked one of my professors who did a lot of consulting, letting me travel with him.
Back at OU?
No, this was a Chicago guy.
Okay.
And help him make a little bit of money while I kind of tried to figure all this out and come up with my idea.
Mm-hmm.
So the first idea that I came up with was around specialty coffee. So now to kind of set the landscape, at that point in time, there was a Starbucks in Chicago that I would go to. So I'd go in on Saturday, and these other people had discovered this place called Starbucks, and they had taken me there. And in this place, people spoke a completely different language than I had ever heard before.
Right.
And so they kind of taught me how to speak the language to order something that I actually kind of liked. And I sort of got hooked on it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And so I'd go to Milwaukee. There wasn't one. I'm like, well, this kind of stinks. I'd like there to be one. So maybe that's what I'll do. And so I called up Starbucks, and I'm like, Starbucks, I would like to bring Starbucks to Milwaukee. And they said, well, first of all, we don't need you to help us take Starbucks anywhere. And second of all, Milwaukee's not even on our next 2 or 3 layers of cities that we're interested in.
Yeah.
They were still like big metros at that point in time.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, well, you know what? Maybe it's still a good idea, but I'll just go ahead and I'll take it to market and I'll lock up the best locations. And that way, when they do come to town, they'll have to deal with me for the best sites. So I start moving down that path, and I'm using my business school knowledge here of how to build a good business plan and figuring out how I'm going to differentiate, which is kind of hard. And so as I started thinking about different ways to differentiate, I came on this concept of something they called a cyber cafe. You heard of that?
Yeah.
So this was very, very new. But basically the idea of integration of technology with a coffee shop. And so this was early days of the internet. Most people at home had a 14.4 or 28.8 modem, still dial up.
Right.
If you had what they called a T1 line, that was kind of a big deal. And most businesses didn't have that. And what I found was in the United States, there was this thing going on in San Francisco called the SFNet, which is actually people would drop quarters in a machine or in a thing beside a computer, and it would give them time on the computer.
Right.
And they could get on and do a bulletin board. So it was command line bulletin board stuff. That was it. Okay. It's like $25 a hour or something like that, probably less than that. And then there was this place in Cambridge, Massachusetts, it was pretty cool. It was kind of high tech and cool, and they had a lot of interesting stuff going on that I really liked. And then there were about a half dozen of them spread across Canada, and that was kind of it. There wasn't anything else in the United States that I could find. So I went on a road show. I took my video camera, got my car, and I drove across southern Canada and down through Cambridge. And then actually there was one in New York City that I found. So I went to the one there and looked at all these. I talked to the owners. I'm like, all right, what worked?
And your wife is how many months pregnant?
Yeah, well, she's probably about 6.
Okay.
Probably about 6. And so she's glad to have me out of the house.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Anyway, take my video camera, interview these folks that are running these places, ask them what they liked, what worked, what didn't work, talk to the customers, what do they like, not like. And I came home and I wrote the business plan for the ultimate cyber cafe. And then I figured out I needed to go raise money to actually pull this off.
Right.
So I start that. I've never done this before.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm talking to friends and family. I'm meeting people. And so this was sort of the first lesson that I learned where just because, well, first, if you've got a business plan, everybody wants to look at it. Everybody wants to talk about this business you're going to start. And many people will say they're interested. But they are not truly interested until they give you that check and it clears. Right? And that's a very small percentage of all the people I talk to. But I did push into, even if they weren't going to do it or weren't sure, who else can I talk to?
Right.
And just keep expanding that until I was able to finally round up enough to do it. So anyway, we get into all these series of kind of decision points. Is that the name of your podcast?
Yes.
And so one of them that I remember was I needed to lease space. And I kind of needed to know the location before I could get the capital. But I kind of needed to have the capital before I could get the lease. And it wasn't like Mark had a whole bunch of money in the bank to kind of jump out in front of this deal. So that was a real, balancing act to be able to figure out how to do that. And ultimately, I kind of had to make the commitment on the lease side and was kind of hanging out there for a little while in order to get the capital to close out, to be able to do it. So I did that. And then to finish out the capital, I had an attorney, and the attorney was very impressed with my analysis and my spreadsheets and all this stuff I'd put together to build this ultimate business plan, right? And so they invested. And so as we needed a little bit more to kind of close out the round, he's like, you know what, I've got a client that I'm going to bring in. And so that client, the attorney, and I actually all flew to Cambridge to go look at this place that was operating just to kind of so they could get a feel for what was going on. And then this guy says, all right, I'm in. And so very wealthy guy, the most, affluent guy in the deal for sure. And so then it comes down to kind of finish out the private placement. And this guy's like, well, I'm going to need some special provisions. And so this is when I learned. Of course
you are.
Right. Of course you are. Well, who knew? I mean, my attorney brought this guy in. Got to be a good guy, right?
Right.
So I was introduced to something they call negative control covenants. You're familiar with them?
Yes.
There were probably, I'm going to guess, 18 to 25 of them on the list.
Wow.
And what I remember telling myself was, this is no big deal. This guy can't tell me what to do. I can't do certain things unless he says yes. But of course, if I want to do these things, he's going to want to say yes. So I immediately rationalized this away. My attorney's given me assurances that this is all very normal and fine. And I really needed that last tranche to be able to wrap this thing up and get going, right? Because clock's ticking. Mark's got to do something. So we get into it and we take off and we build this thing. And it was super cool. So I had probably the coolest architect in town that when I first approached them and said, will you design this thing for me? They said no. And I basically don't handle no very well. And so they came around and they agreed to get in this deal. And so they really designed this very cool space. And so we had about 2,500 square feet, custom designed stations where you'd sit like in this booth with your friends with a big 20-inch monitor in front of you. So nobody had these big monitors. We had a T1 line of internet access, so you had lots of speed. All the stations were networked together so you could interact with each other. They all had, CD players, which not for music CDs, but that's what the games were on then, right? And so you could network game. That was a big deal. They all had cameras on top of them, so you could do, a very early version of what, we came to know as Zoom or something like that. So all this super cool stuff. And we built a software package to put on this thing to where it would charge by the minute for you to use it. And we actually integrated it with the Café side to where you could order from the Café and do all that. And so really, really cool setup. And on the Café side, kind of interesting thing there. So remember, I wanted to start a Starbucks. Well, a guy did what I said I was going to do, and he actually left Starbucks and he came to Milwaukee and he opened a place called Stone Creek Coffee. And it was great. I mean, he learned everything he needed to know from there. And so I didn't want to compete with him. And so I'm like, Eric, will you come in and just teach us how to do this? We'll basically put your signage up there. And so he made a custom blend for us. He taught all of our baristas how to do this. They told us what equipment to buy and how to set it up and lay it out. So really, really great partnership there. So we had all this stuff working and we're rolling. And at the time, the internet was hot. Everybody was talking about it. So anytime a news station wanted to do a story or a newspaper or whatever wanted to run something, they'd come to our spot. And they would shoot the pictures and they would use us as the backdrop. So lots of interviews, lots of press, which is really, really fun. And so this thing kind of starts going and we're busy and we're cranking. But one of the things I noticed was people would log on and they do whatever they were going to do, very kind of task focused. And then they would log off. And so the meter would stop running. If the meter wasn't running, we weren't making money.
Right.
And so it occurred to me that really wasn't the experience I wanted. What I wanted was someplace where you could have young people and old people come together. The young people kind of teach and show the old people and have it be a very social kind of experience. And so I was trying to figure out how to get the sort of this clock out of their mind of what was going on. And so it's like, all right, what other businesses have similarities with this? And what I finally came up with was a health club. Health club has expensive equipment that you may not invest in buying for your house. It has stuff that you may not know how to use very well, where it's helped to have somebody that has some expertise show you.
Yeah.
And it has a sort of a social element where you're interacting with other people. I'm like, we have all those. We're just like that. How does a health club sell? They sell memberships. So let's try that. Let's do memberships. So you can buy a 1-day unlimited membership or a week or a month or a year. And so we roll this out. That was the unlock. So it takes off, right? And people are using this stuff. They're interacting exactly the way that I thought they would. And now we're packed. And so on a busy night at each of these stations, we'd have lines just like 4 people deep. And so I'm like, this is awesome. So the cafe's doing great, but we've got people waiting. So we got more demand than we have supply. So back to business school, what do?
Yeah. Raise prices.
Raise prices.
Yeah.
So how much we raise them? Let's double them. So we doubled them. And we saw almost no drop off in demand.
Wow.
So it just flowed right through. So we're getting this thing figured out. It's taken off and it's playing out pretty much like we thought it would. Now, as a first-time entrepreneur, as a first-time business plan writer, and a first-time building a cap table and figuring out how much money I'm going to need, do you think I got it right?
No.
Yeah, a little bit short. Didn't set aside quite enough working capital to, cover the period we would have, the hole we were going to have to go through to get this thing to break even. So as we're climbing the curve, so we're getting closer and closer to break even, the trajectory is very strong and very positive, but we're short.
Yeah.
Now, I have people regularly coming into the shop going, I want to invest in this thing. Great relationship with our bank. They're loving it. They see what's going on. And so they're actually happy to lend us more money if we should need it. So that's fine to do either of these things. All I have to do
is get consent
from my guy that's got the negative control covenants. And the craziest thing, one of the craziest things, at least in my early entrepreneurial career, is the guy says no.
Yeah.
To this day, I don't really understand why. But he says no. And I'm like, okay, this makes no sense to me. Do you want to buy us out? Do you want us out of this thing for some reason? Nope, no interest in that. Do you want us to buy you out? Nope, no interest in that. I'm going to hold my position. Okay, we're kind of in a box here. So I go back to the bank. I'm like, all right, I'm going to start another company. I want to assume all the liabilities of this first company, and we're going to transfer all the assets over. You good with that? Yep, we're good with that. Okay, so we start down that path, and then this guy's attorney calls that bank and says, you do that, and I'll drag you through court for years. And so they put the kibosh on that, and they said, Mark, we need you to pay the loan off. And so they basically called the loan, and I'm stuck, and I did what was probably one of the first internet auctions to sell all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the moment of reckoning and the decision point was, and I'll never forget it, it's me and my wife and now my firstborn son in a little baby carrier sitting on top of one of the tables, and I'm sitting there with this group of killer employees that we'd put together and telling them, show's over.
Yeah.
We got to shut it down.
Yeah.
That was awful, man.
Yeah.
That was a hard day.
Yeah.
And
Because it was going great.
it was going so well.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah.
And it wasn't perfect, but it was doing what it should have.
You were on your entrepreneurial adventure.
Yep.
Yeah. So you shut it down, and then you move on to something else.
Yep. Then I got to go back to work.
Yeah.
Right.
You had to take a job,
which was painful. I had to get a job. And so I sort of got really fortunate, and I feel like I've been very blessed and watched out for through my whole life. And this was another case of that, where Amoco Petroleum is headquartered in Chicago, and they were basically looking for an entrepreneur in residence.
Sure.
And so I fit that bill.
Yeah.
Because I had done this, and it had not worked, and I had the scars from it, and they loved all that. But what they were looking for was somebody to come in. They felt like they had gotten stodgy and slow.
Yeah.
And so they had, internal ways to do everything, but they wanted somebody to come in and try to do it via an external approach. And so I went in and did that, and that was a great gig. I had a huge budget. I had tremendous autonomy. I built like a 75-person, what I would call a virtual team, because it was mostly contractors and fractions just had a few direct employees. But I had outside people doing what every other department in the company was being forced to use internal resources for, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So including like IT.
Yeah.
So, IT was super rigid and slow and expensive, the way they would charge for things. And so the IT people would come to me, they're like, Mark, you have to use us. I'm like, actually, I don't. And not only that, but look, I got it done in a tenth of the time at a tenth of the cost here.
Yeah.
And so did that for a while. I was with them for like 4 years, 2 new concepts that we launched and got into some really interesting automation stuff. This was my first exposure to high-end predictive analytics, where I met a guy who actually was a professor at TCU, who was one of the early guys in what became AI. We didn't really call it that at the time, but he was an expert in behavioral analytics. And so that came back later. So I go through my whole experience with Amoco doing this stuff. And then one of the guys that went to the same business school I did, I get in contact with him, and he tells me about this thing he's got going on in Los Alamos, New Mexico. Do you know what Los Alamos is famous for?
UFOs?
That's Roswell.
Okay. Close.
That's close. That's very close, guy. Good. You're in the right state.
There's the security.
Yeah, so that's where the Manhattan Project was, right?
You.
So that's where they built the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
And so it sits up on this mesa up above Santa Fe, basically, right? And a really secluded area, and it's basically just tons of smart people. They say that there's a higher concentration of PhDs there than there is any place else on the planet. So anyway, this guy had discovered this business out there, which was a bunch of these scientists that had spun out of Los Alamos National Lab to start a private company using the high-end analytics that they had used, internally to kind of serve more corporate applications. So he's like, you got to come out and take a look at this. So go out and take a look at it. And basically the deal was, you got this whole bundle of intellectual property that these guys had come up with. They'd never met a problem they couldn't solve.
Right.
That's how smart they were.
Right.
They'd solved all of them, right? But now they got 35 different things that are in all these different, everything from how to seed a field to how to optimize a call center to how to detect, credit risk and all this kind of stuff. So, all right, how can we take this and narrow it down to something we could actually build a big business out of?
Commercialize it.
And so he talks me into leaving Amoco. So I leave Amoco and I go out there and take this position with him. And again, I just sort of stumbled into this thing, and it was super, super cool. So I look at this whole portfolio of what they've got, and this was in the early days of the acronym CRM. So next to nobody was talking about this.
Yeah.
But I had just happened to be at a conference or something where I heard somebody mention it, had some kind of flavor of what it was. And so match that up within these guys' basket of intellectual property, they had something that would basically predict what you would buy when you would buy it, how much you would spend for it. I mean, it was kind of the perfect fit for this thing. And they had built these agent-based simulators that would create a Scott agent and a Mark agent and put them in this environment with rules and products to offer and set them off and see how they would react. So they could simulate all these different kinds of ecosystems and kind of what would happen. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Those things are ripe for what's going on in the marketplace right now. So he and I write a business plan, and we hit the road. Now, this is getting into the late 90s. Okay, so think internet's hot, right? Internet's getting bigger. This is when Silicon Valley's really popping up. You got Sand Hill Road, you got all that kind of stuff. And so we're literally out on the West Coast meeting with one private equity firm or one high-flying new tech company after another, trying to figure out who we should partner with. And so we're talking partnerships with all these people. And we're sitting in this one guy's office that had a fraud detection kind of technology that was out of DARPA. Okay, our stuff was out of Los Alamos National Labs. Also, we had a lot of defense contracts underneath this, a lot of high-end stuff that we had done that was funded by Citi, on the financial services side. And so this guy leans across the table and goes, you know what, I don't want to partner with you guys. I want to buy you. And so he and I kind of look at each other. It's kind of like, okay, didn't see that coming. So what does that look like? And would we even be interested? And so, long story short, it actually becomes a deal. So we combine these companies. The guy that was running the company I was with becomes the president of this new company. I go in and kind of take over all the stuff we'd been working on and a couple of other things they had rolled up and kind of put them together. It was all in the marketing optimization space. And so at one point there, we had 130 million consumers' data.
Wow. That
we were building models off of to basically say, okay, here's which product we're going to offer this person inside this whole highly constrained model of you can only offer certain things to certain people with a certain frequency and just kind of all these kinds of constraints that were put. So one of the physics PhDs, these I'm telling you, these were super smart people. He explained to me what they called an NP hard problem. It's a problem that it's non-deterministic in polynomial time. Meaning that if you put all the most powerful computers on the planet on it, they could chug away forever and never come up with the optimal answer. Okay, now this was all kind of pre-AI and quantum computing and all the stuff that we know now. Right? So, but back in the day, that was the way that they looked at it. So the solve was one of our genius scientists is in the shower one morning, and he comes up with this way to, while you can't necessarily climb the highest peak in the whole landscape, the optimal one, you could get really close to that really fast. And so that allowed us to do this, called it a cross-sell optimization solution that, anyway, we go to market with and did really well. So this thing's taken off and going like crazy. The company is one of the early high-flying tech companies, kind of in the late 90s, has a big IPO, so it's a public company now. But meanwhile, Mark has moved from Milwaukee. I get in this world where I can kind of travel all over. I've got an office in New Mexico, but we're going and visiting with these tech companies all over the country. So I'd moved to Dallas. I'd figured this was a good place to travel from. Figured it was a good place economically.
Good home base.
Good home base. Good place to raise a family. All the stuff. And so I'm living here, and meanwhile, we've had 2 more kids since then. So I've got 3 little ones at home. And the pressure starts coming to, hey, you need to come out to San Diego. They're headquartered in San Diego. And you come out to San Diego, we're getting too much interest from Wall Street on this stuff that you're doing, and you're not even here.
Right.
And so I remember thinking through the process of another decision point. Wow, do I want to move to California? The superficial analysis was, for me to live in the same kind of neighborhood, same kind of school, same kind of everything that I've got here in Flower Mound, Texas, is going to be 2 to 4 times what it was for me here, right? So okay, but I could probably make more money and whatever. So you kind of do the ROI on that. But the clincher for me, Scott, was, if I move these kids who are doing really well, and my wife who's doing really well here out to California, and I screw all that up, somehow, I'll never forgive myself.
Yeah.
So that was the most important thing. And I said, nope, not moving. And so pull the paracord and parachute back out to stay here. So now though, I gotta do the next thing. So what's the next thing? So I've sort of gotten exposed to this predictive analytics space in this company out of Los Alamos. I had gotten exposed to it a little bit at Amoco with this professor from TCU that I had worked with to help me do site selection. And so really sort of, again, very blessed, he pops up again. And he's got a consulting business that's been going, and like most consulting businesses would do, they kind of grow up to a certain level and they kind of get crushed under their own weight. They can't support all the volume they're doing. They kind of come back down. They kind of grow again. So it's this cycle that's going on and on. Well, at this last company, I had sort of been exposed to the idea of software as a service. So SaaS. So this was the very beginning stages of what something like that looked like. That's what we had. That's how we sold it. And so this guy and I get in touch, and I'm like, you know what? I bet we could take your consulting business and turn it into a service model like this, built on a subscription-based technology platform. He thought that was great. And so we formed this company that we called Prediction Analytics, and off we go. And so we're working with big retailers and restaurants to help them, pick the site that they could best put their business to optimize the revenue they were able to generate, how to optimize the number of sites they had in a market so that they don't leave too much demand on the ground, but they don't cannibalize each other. And we were working with lots of big names in that. And we get about 18 months into this thing, and we get a call from a very big company called Experian. And Experian, most people in the States know as one of the three big credit bureaus. That's kind of how you think of them, right? But globally, they are one of, if not the largest information company on the planet. They have every kind of information about everything all across the world. And for a data analytics company, information's the fuel, right? Data's the fuel.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, this is really interesting. And so they put us on a test, kind of a challenge, if you will. They were sort of doing a global search to see who was the best at this site modeling stuff. And so they threw a McDonald's puzzle at us. And so McDonald's had solved it. They had solved it. And so then they wanted us to solve it. And so turned out we had the best answer. And so they're like, okay, we want to buy you guys. And so that leads to my first dance really with what an acquisition looks like of a business that I've started. And turns out that's a funny thing with lots of interesting twists and turns. And we were really a small company. We had revenue. Yeah. We were pre-profit. But we were not losing a ton of money, but we were below break even. And so there's a little bit of urgency, right? Because again, Mark's not great at building up a nice reserve of working capital over here to run things for a while. I've demonstrated that. And so we get into this situation where we sort of became a political football inside this giant multi-billion-dollar corporate behemoth that had a whole U.S. thing, but their rest of world operation, which was based out of the U.K., was the one who was really driving our acquisition. But then the U.S. group is like, no, we want to have them. And then the rest of the world group is like, no, we want to have them. So it ends up the board of this multi-billion-dollar company is spending board meetings talking about this tiny little company in Irving, Texas, right? And so this thing drags on, and we get into all kinds of crazy stuff around that. But we eventually do sell the business to them, and I take over running that business within Experian. And they do all the typical deals where you've got the employment contract and all of that. And so in your experience, when a founder goes to work for the acquiring company, how long do they stay?
1 to 3 years. Probably just say 2 years.
Yeah, I made it 1.
Yeah.
I made it 1.
Yeah.
And it's just different. It's just painful. It's one of those boxes that you get in, and it's not.
So is this now where you go to EOS? Or were there some more stops?
There was more. So basically, that's when I made the switch from being an operator to being an advisor.
Yeah.
So go from there to Vistage Chair.
Yeah.
Start 4 Vistage peer groups here in town. I appreciated the peer group because I'd been an EO for a long time, which is where you and I originally met 100 years ago.
Long time ago.
Right?
Yeah.
So I valued that. So I did that with some folks. And then as a Vistage chair, I got exposed to EOS.
How did you meet Gino Wickman initially?
So somebody did a webinar. Mike Payton did a webinar. I saw that. I was interested enough to kind of ask more questions, which led me to fly to Detroit. And that's how I met Gino.
And you were what number of implementers?
I don't know the exact number, but when I showed up, I'm going to guess there were about 24 implementers on the planet.
Yeah. And today there are how many?
Almost 1,000.
1,000. Yeah, that's what I figured. So for our listeners, Mark's been our implementer at EOS for a little over a decade now.
Yeah.
And I tell people, honest to goodness, single best decision we've made at True North in 25 years. So we've made lots of good decisions along the way, but if there was one decision that I could say that was a game changer, it would have been to hire Mark and EOS, so implementing EOS. So it's been a game changer for us. So walk me through just why EOS for you personally initially, and then we can talk about maybe some of the benefits for business owners.
Yeah, so I had done other systems in my various businesses along the way, and the thing that EOS did that the others didn't do nearly as well was it sort of helped you bridge the chasm. So most systems, you could see where you were, and you could see where you wanted to be, but step by step, the path that you needed to follow to get from point A to point B wasn't as clear. The process, if you will, wasn't worked out as well. And so that's what EOS solved that made me think it was a better mousetrap. And so I adopted it, and then as I began to work with people to implement it, their experience really reflected that, and so it just sort of snowballed. I mean, it really kind of took off. When I came back, Scott, I was the only implementer in the state of Texas. There had never been anyone here before. Nobody knew what EOS was.
Right.
The next closest implementer was in Des Moines, Iowa. Right. And then you fast forward to today in Texas, and there's over 100 implementers in the state of Texas.
Right. So for you, I get the sense that this is your passion. This is what you're about. This is, you've had all these experiences along the way, but this is kind of like the essence of, it's the cumulative learning from all these experiences that allow you to be effective in your role as an implementer.
I have a strong appreciation for the visionary entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And, I love the fact that there are people in the world that will take that leap. They'll have that entrepreneurial seizure, and they'll take that leap sort of against all odds, against everybody else's advice, and they're just compelled to try something. They can't not. Right? And then having lived through what it feels like to take that leap and then find yourself in a hole, that's not what you thought it was going to be.
Right.
You thought it was going to be fun and easy and make a ton of money and have a ton of time, and then you find that you're working forever around the clock. You don't love all of what you're doing. You may not love the people that you're around. And it's just kind of, how do you dig out of that hole and get them back to actually get in their business to do what they thought it was going to be able to do in the first place?
Yeah, to unlock their human potential.
Exactly.
Yeah, inside the business.
Exactly.
For sure. So you've written now, one book that's published, and you're about to publish a second book. So the first book, Rocket Fuel, is about the relationship between the visionary and integrator. So talk to us, just define visionary and integrator for us.
Yeah, so visionary is the one that, again, it's typically the founding entrepreneur, has all the ideas, sees the future, sees where things are headed and how to position yourself along that path. They're great at big external relationships, but they have a gap or a blind spot usually on the execution side. It's not what they're great at. It's not what they love doing. And so the integrator, as we call it, is sort of that natural execution-oriented counterpart that is great at all that stuff. They follow through on things. They chase the details. They're great at holding people accountable. They're great at being consistent. And so when we get those two together, is really what we found. Gino coined those terms, but I had lived it in my business experience too. So when we got together, it all kind of came out in Rocket Fuel. But it's the entrepreneurial business that has those two and that kind of relationship just reaches levels that you don't see in other businesses. And
I think we've experienced that, and we've had lots of challenging conversations over the last 10 years between Mark Gelbach and I, who's our co-founder here at True North. Mark and I have very different personalities and profiles and the way we think about the world, and sometimes we need a therapist to help us work through some of the challenges. But ultimately, I think if Mark Gelbach were sitting here talking to us today, would say, as I would, that we're a better company because of these two skill sets, but we did need a framework to help organize how we work together. And that's been the power of EOS for us personally, I think.
Well, it's been a joy to watch what you all have done. And you are exceptional at surrounding yourself with great people as well. You're great people, but that's who you demand that when they're going to be in the firm with you. And so that shows up. And that's what makes it all happen. And it's not a straight line.
It's not a straight line.
It's hills and valleys and, fall down and all the kind of stuff along the way. And so you've persevered through all of that, but holding this picture in mind of where you wanted this thing to go. And so it's been a pure joy for me to kind of be along for the ride and have a front row seat as I watch you guys build this thing.
So now you've written Visionary, and you're about to publish that. So tell me what the sort of the inspiration for that book is.
Yeah, so Visionary is the deep dive into all the things that are important to be truly great in the visionary role, right? So Rocket Fuel sets up, here's the structure, here's all the basic mechanics of how this works so somebody can decide if that's really what they want to try to do and what is necessary to make that relationship really powerful. So from there, if you're going to sit in the visionary seat, I've identified 10 pillars of greatness for that seat. And so it starts with a deep dive of really understanding yourself and being sure that you are honest with yourself, because that sort of unlocks all the different things that you have to work with or need to work on and need to watch out for. And then we dive into all that. But it's been a great, fun project for me to work on and putting all that together in a form that hopefully will help some folks get closer to where they want to go.
I bet it will. So how long have you been an implementer for EOS?
13 years.
13 years. And I would say like EOS is, it's like, it's on a hockey stick, in terms of growth and sort of people's awareness around it. So obviously you're writing the book, about to publish the second book. What's next for you as it relates to EOS, or just kind of the next phase for Mark? I know you've got a son that's also trained to be an implementer now, and you're working with him.
So one of my sons he's become an implementer, so that's really fun and interesting, and it's cool that he and I get to talk about stuff in this space. My other boys are in very interesting things too, so there's still lots of overlap. Who knows how all that will play out over time. But then my next project is, and I talk about it a little bit in the Visionary book, is something that I call the exponential freedom framework. And I've identified 9 domains of freedom. And the idea there, Scott, is really that your definition of what freedom looks like for you is different than mine for me.
Right.
It's different than what Mark's is.
Right.
And so if you don't know what you want, then the odds of you ever actually getting it are pretty slim. So this framework of the 9 domains helps you think through each of these different lenses to get really clear on what you'd like them to look like out there in the future. And then we draw a line from that future back to today so that you can get really clear on, okay, these are the things I should be focusing on. These are the levers that if I'll focus on them in the present, that's going to give me the best chance to begin to realize more and more of what I truly want as we go along.
And how are you going to implement that? Is that through your EOS clients, or is that something different on the side?
It's totally aligned with and completely separate from EOS.
Okay.
Right? So EOS will always be a part of my life, and I love the community and everything that they do and believe in that, and I'll continue to work with great companies to do that. If you think about the 9 domains of freedom, really, I'm focusing them on the visionary entrepreneur. That's who I want to help, right? That's who I care about. I believe that group has the highest potential to make meaningful impact in the world, just because it's leverage, right? Through all the people in your business, and then through all the people that your company touches. If I can impact you, Scott Wood, I can impact thousands and thousands of people. Right. So it's a great multiplier from my perspective. So if I can help you, that's really what this Exponential Freedom Project is all about. So it'll be, eventually it'll be a book. I touch on it, as I said, in Visionary, and then there'll be for people that read that and like that, I've got a mini book that I'll have for them in the near term, and then there'll be, who knows, there'll be courses and different ways that we'll teach
content.
There'll be content.
Yeah,
you can count on that.
Awesome. Well, Mark, thank you so much. It's a great conversation today. And as I mentioned before, EOS has been a game changer for us. And and very much because of your participation in our growth. So thank you for that.
You're very kind. That means a lot to me, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Decision Points.